Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver with an 1.25-inch receiver tube opening on a 2022 Mazda CX-9. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and it is a hidden cross tube, meaning that the only portion that you're going to see outside of the vehicle is going to be the 1.25-inch receiver tube opening. And with this size, you are going to be a little bit limited as far as bike racks or cargo carriers that you'll be able to get. There are other hitches available for this that are going to be 2-inch that'll also give you a little higher capacity, but if the accessories you have are going to be 1.25 inch, it's going to work great on here. Now those accessories are going to stay in place with a 1/2-inch pin and clip, and this is not included with the hitch. Generally, a lot of your accessories, when you pick those up, will come with it. You could also pick up a locking version here at eTrailer, and that's going to allow you to put your accessories in place, lock it up, and know that no one's going to be able to walk away with them. We have a rolled style safety chain loop here that when planning on pulling a trailer, you can easily hook up your safety chains, whether it be an S-style hook or even a clevis style. Now, speaking of towing a trailer, you are going to want to adhere to the capacities of this hitch, and those are going to come in with a gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. You also have a tongue weight rating of 350 pounds, which is going to be the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening, and that's going to be for your cargo carriers or bike racks, so just make sure you adhere to those. And if you are planning on pulling a trailer, also check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing, and also compare that not only to the hitch, but the other components that you're hooking up to your trailer, and that way you stay safe. A few quick measurements from the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point of our rear fascia. We're coming in right at about 5 inches, and that's important for some of your foldable accessories like your cargo carrier or bike racks. When they're in the stowed position, you want to make sure you're not making contact with your rear fascia. Now, it's important also in that stowed position, you probably won't be able to open up your hatch, so just kind of keep that in mind. We're also going to check our ground clearance, which from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're looking at right at about 14.5 inches, which is a pretty good ground clearance. It's also helpful when choosing a ball mount. You can measure the coupler of your trailer and compare that with the 14.5 inches to determine if you need a rise or a drop. Now, with your suspended accessories like your cargo carrier bike racks, you want to make sure that you're keeping in mind when you go up an incline. Those are going to want to tilt towards the ground, and you don't want those to bottom out. So once you have those loaded up, just remember that when going up those hills. Now, as far as installation goes, this is a pretty easy hitch to do. You will have to lower down your muffler, and there's going to be just a small trim panel that you'll remove that will not be going back on. You can knock this out within about half an hour to an hour. You might want to have an extra set of hands to get that hitch raised up in place, but other than that, this is a nice easy one, and I'm going to walk you through every step to make sure you get yours installed. We're going to begin our installation on the lower portion of our fascia where there's a small panel that we'll need to remove, and this is not going to be going back up because once the hitch is in place, there's not going to be a clearance for this. To remove it, there's going to be a series of plastic push pins that we're going to go ahead and pop off. And to get these removed, you can use a flathead screwdriver. There's a little notch there. Just kind of pry in there, and if you need to do a twisting motion, that should help get this popped out. So go ahead, there's 4 of these. You're going to want to take those out. Now, another helpful tool is going to be a trim panel tool, and these really come in handy for prying these out. But either method is going to work to get these removed. Now, there is a clip here that attaches it to a bracket that's up there. We're going to be removing the bracket as well. So to get this to separate, there's a little tab here. You can kind of just push in, and we should be able to get this to pop off. You can see the tab on this back side here, and once I get this pried off, I'll show you. So this is what it looks like, and you can reach up here with a flathead and just pry that off, or you can even use your fingers to gain access to that. Now, the bracket that we've removed those plastic clips from, if you kind of go up, you'll see a 10mm screw. We'll go ahead and get those removed. And as I move this, you'll see that there is a plastic push pin. It's going to be the center one out of the 3. So you can go ahead and get that removed, and that's going to allow our bracket to come off. There's also a clip up top on our bracket, so we'll go ahead and get that popped off. It's going to be very similar to what we had on these ones here. So once you pull those off, you can set these aside. Next, we'll go ahead and remove our exhaust isolators, and this is going to give us access to be able to pass our hitch up to get it where we need to mount it up on the frame. And if you've never removed these before, a pry bar helps a lot here to get leverage. And also, if they're a little sticky or not really wanting to move, what you can do is spray a little bit of either silicone or even a soapy water solution, just to kind of help move this along. And that's going to make it a lot easier, especially if they've been on there for a while. Sometimes these get caked up and it can be a little bit tricky to pry them off. Now there's also going to be two more isolators that we need to remove, and those are going to be kind of tucked on the back side of the muffler, but we do need to support our exhaust because there's no isolators pretty much all the way down to where our catalytic converter is, so we don't want the exhaust just hanging. It might cause damage. So I'm using a cam buckle strap here because I'm on a lift, but you can use a box or just a block of wood. Make sure it's just not free hanging down. So we'll go ahead and get these two popped off as well. So now we're going to grab our fish wire, our carriage bolt, and our spacer block, and we're going to start on this smaller hole that's towards the front of the vehicle. Take your fish wire with the coiled end and feed that coiled end towards this access hole near the rear of the vehicle. And once you kind of get a finger on that coiled end, pull that through the larger access hole. If you need to put some bends on here to kind of get it to be a little bit easier, feel free to do that. And I also put a bend on the tail end. This kind of helps prevent it from pulling through. And also when we put our hitch up in place, this will kind of snap it in and make it a little bit easier. So at this point, we'll take our spacer block and just feed that over the coil. You can push this in the frame rail. And then our carriage bolt, you're just going to want to thread on that coiled end. And then we'll grab our tail end here, feed our carriage bolt into the frame rail, and then just pull this back. And once you jostle it around a little, that should drop into the carriage bolt. Now we're going to leave our fish wire attached. This is going to help us when we put our hitch in place, because if we bump this up and it goes in the frame rail, we're going to have a little bit of issues. So keeping this attached until we have the hitch in place is going to be key. Now we have this one in place. Now we need to do a reverse fish wire technique on the access hole. So I'll show you that. Now this is pretty easy. The reverse fish wire, we're basically just feeding this up in the hole. So take your spacer block and just feed that over the coil, and you can hold that in place, and then you can coil your carriage bolt onto that. And then we'll just feed both of them up. And then once we have both of those in the frame rail, we'll just pull this down. And now we have that in place. So go ahead and repeat the same exact process on the other side of the vehicle. Now with an extra set of hands, I got Joe here to help me, and we're going to raise this up in position over the muffler. So take your fish wires and feed them through the corresponding holes. And I would suggest having one of your serrated flange nuts handy. Now sometimes these carriage bolts can kind of pop up, so you can use the hitch to kind of put pressure against it to keep it in place. But just get this hand started on each side, and that way you don't have to hold the hitch up, and it's going to make it easier to get the rest of the hardware in place. So with our hitch supported with those two flange nuts in place, we can go ahead and get the rest of our flange nuts hand tightened on. Now with all of our hardware in place, I'm going to take a 3/4 inch socket, and I'm just going to snug this up. We don't have to get crazy here. We just want the hitch to draw up. But we're going to come back with our torque wrench immediately after this. So just go ahead and tighten these down. Now with that same 3/4 inch socket, we have our torque wrench, and the torque settings are going to be found in the instruction manual. This is going to be important. It's going to make sure that it's tight enough for the lifespan of the hitch to stay in place, but also not too tight, putting stress on the threads. Now, if you need a torque wrench, we have these available here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. So go through and torque down all of your hardware. With all of our hardware tight and torqued, we'll go ahead, we'll lift our muffler back up and get our isolators popped back into place. You can also go ahead and remove whatever you had supporting the exhaust. That was a look at installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2022 Mazda CX-9.